why we chose Shawshank out of 62 other films, of which there's a good dozen that are absolutely brilliant, is because, partly because of the fabulous writing of it. Stephen King wrote the shorts, 2 shorts in fact, one called Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption, and the other one, The Green Mile, and he put it out to tender for whoever could write a good script that he would accept. He would sell the copyright for $1. And Frank got both copyrights and he got both films. So it was a brilliant script. But you can see this film, and I have seen it over and over and over again, and still love it and still appreciate the story, which is so human and so strong. And it became a classic. As it happens, as it came out, it bombed. But over time, people, through word of mouth, it became a classic. And what's interesting for us is that it was fraught of problems. So it wasn't a film that was easy to make in any way whatsoever. It was hard. The budget was low. The schedule was apparently people felt it was impossible. And yet, what turned out to be a fantastic, beautiful, beautifully lit and well-told story. But I should ask Roger, what were your problems with the film, and were you drawn by first of all, the story?
Yeah, I mean, I was totally drawn to it by the story. I know it was like a wonderful script. I mean, at the time, it was one of the best scripts I'd ever read, you know. But it was under budgeted, and the sort of wish list was quite big. You know, it's like that on any film, whatever the budget is, isn't it? You know, expectations is more than really the budget. And just over halfway through the production, we had to make sort of big cuts. And in a funny kind of way, I think they really helped the film, because what was cut was some of the bigger, kind of more action-orientated scenes, which didn't really help the story. They were just there because, you know, put action in a movie, you know. And I think in a way that helped the final product. It probably didn't help the original box office, but, you know, it actually helped, I think, it be a better film for it. Because it was so much more really about the characters than it was about, you know.
And it's brilliant casting as well, both the main actors, but all the auxiliary, the extras, all the people in the background felt real, felt like they were there in prison, you know, and so often that's not the case in films. You know, you get all these pumped
maybe
up
we
people
were. We were in a real prison, and maybe that's how we felt. No, we were. It's funny, because we were in a real prison that had just been decommissioned about 2 years previously. And a lot of the people that worked actually on the movie were prisoners that were now housed in a prison down the road, and they would come and work on the movie.
Is that
true?
true?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And some, you know, I remember talking to some old guy who was still in prison, and he was telling about stories that had happened in the prison that was our location in Ohio there, and that was pretty gruesome. Pretty gruesome.
And you built part of the, because Joe told me that, you know, he gave you the camera, or you got the cameras from him, and he didn't quite understand why you built part of the prison.
Well, the script was, no, it wasn't really. The script was so specific to a particular cell block that was like an inner courtyard of the jail, and the location we had a, you know, great you know, courtyard and wall, and a governor's, you know, the prison governor's building and everything, and the mess room, and everything else was perfect for what we needed, but it didn't have this inner courtyard in the jail cell, you know. We wanted this thing, which is, I guess it's more like a sort of Alcatraz or something, you know, it's in a well. So Terry Marsh, the production designer, built that in a warehouse nearby, you know, actually built it as big as he could in a warehouse. I remember there was about 5 feet spare above the top of the set, between the top of the set and the ceiling of the warehouse to light from, you know. But it was like, it was a beautiful set. It was an absolutely fantastic set.
sort of want to talk about, the reason why people hire us is for our taste. And basically that's what directors hire you for. And everybody has a slightly different taste. And your background is in Devon. Did you come from a family that was a creative family that used to take you to exhibitions or anything like that, or did you develop it at art school? Where does your taste and your creativity come
I have
from?
no idea. My father was a building contractor. Had run a little ironmongery shop in Devon. I had really nothing to do with. My mother, who died when I was very young, was an actress, but it was nothing to do with. I didn't really even know her, so that didn't really count that much. She taught me to draw. That was about it, all I remember. But when I was pretty young, I joined the local film society and started watching movies I couldn't understand, like Alphaville and Melville. Yeah, right. And then I went to art college and sort of I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I guess it came from a combination of those things. I don't know where does it
But you
come
were
from.
a stills photographer for a long time.
That's what I started off wanting to be a painter, and then I sort of everything I painted was very kind of naturalistic, photorealistic. So I took up photography. Then I went to art college, and I carried on doing photography, even though they didn't count that as any kind of creative art form or something. But that's what I did, and it just built up from there. A friend of mine applied to the National Film School, and I didn't know anything about it. And I thought, by that time I was kind of getting a sort of documentary feel of photography, and the idea of recording, real life, I suppose, photojournalism and stuff. And then the idea of making documentaries sort of became quite strong. So then I applied to film school and got in. The second year it was open, National Film School, and it just sort of gradually built up. I mean, as I say, I started loving movies when I basically started going to this film society. But I mean, I didn't connect that as something I could do as a career or anything. It's not something I could earn a living doing.
And what do you love about the Melville films? Like,
I love their simplicity and their lack of trivia. They go directly to the heart of the story and the characters. And I think Melville was probably one of the most influential
for you?
filmmakers. Yeah, really. Yeah.
And so, documentaries taught you so much about lighting, is that right? I mean, in terms of using the light that is there and observing light.
I
and
think that's
positioning
what's
people
great
there.
about documentary working in it. Is you got kind of you work with the light that's available and try and create something with what you have at hand. But it also teaches you it teaches you quickly, but it teaches you how to be quick in terms of setting a frame and finding the angle and reading what's happening, reading the development of something that's going on in front of you. And that really, I think, relates to doing fiction as well. When you're looking at actors rehearsing a scene, I find that my documentary experience really comes in very handy in those situations. I feel like I'm still looking at it as though I was watching real life and figuring how to place myself on the camera to translate that what's happening within the scene.
And this week, I've been re-seeing so many of your films, and what is striking, I'll throw it out there and tell me if I'm wrong or simplistic, is that compositionally, frame-wise, is sort of paramount to you in terms, and throughout all your films, and every single film I've seen of yours, it's got wonderful classical composition and painterly compositions, and and the frame is incredibly important to you. And the difference between a period film or a film like Valley of Eli, which is not documentary but more realistic, is the lighting. The lighting, the contrast, the coloring of the things. but throughout all your films, throughout every single film I've seen of yours, the compositions and your choices of compositions are quite similar. And it's mostly, you use the light to make the difference between period or the difference between films. And obviously the locations will make the difference. If you're in Fargo and you're in the middle of this white landscape, it's obviously going to have a different look than anything else. But compositionally, the widescreen compositions that you have, to me, is a repetitive constant, which is sensational.
Yeah, I suppose that's true to a degree, but then on the other hand, I think I approach things slightly differently. You know, like if you mentioned Fargo, I mean, we were deliberately shooting Fargo on slightly longer lenses in a slightly more observational way than, say, you know, Hudsucker or Barton Fink. I mean, so I think, the idea of composition is intrinsic. I mean, it's just something that's part of you, isn't it? You know what I mean? You compose in one way, I compose in another. Everybody composes in a different way. But say the approach to each film is slightly different. I mean, and the way I like to move a camera or not move a camera changes. It's interesting. True Grit. One of the reviewers said it was like almost Bressonian. Well, I mean, it's as much or more the Coen brothers than it is me in a way, the overall style. But it is, sometimes you go for this incredible simplicity, and that was the right project to do that on, that incredible simple camera style, I think. It's
but
interesting. Another movie, you might do it totally differently. Yeah. You might never stop moving the camera, you know, but but the composition, it's probably a constant thing, yeah.
I mean, the choice of movement and things like that is very much story-based. You pare it down so that you're telling a story. It's 9 times out of 10 a human story about human emotions or human tragedy or human something or other.
I mean, I think for me, if I can't relate to the characters, then I don't really have anything, you know. I can't really relate to the movie unless I can relate to the characters, you know.
And I think you are undoubtedly the best night exterior cinematographer, I think.
Oh, really? It gives me the willies.
I know it does. I know, and I've heard that you think that.
I run ranting off into the bush when I have to do a moonlight scene.
You're so subtle with your lighting, and you never do the obvious.
It's because I never ask for enough light. It always looks subtle because it's so damn dark.
There are a couple of scenes I've seen recently, which I just wondered whether they came out of accidents on set. Now, which, I mean, it's not a derogatory thing to say.
No.
You pick up on certain things that happen in front of you that you think, oh, wow, I could never have thought of that.
Yeah,
it's brilliant.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, the assassination of Jesse James, for instance, that period when they're in the forest with those hoods on the thing and the shadows go, I mean, it's arresting. It's an arresting image for me. I mean, is it that you just got the train coming up and down and suddenly thought, oh, that looks great?
No, that was in our heads. I mean, Andrew, Dominic, the director, and I, we'd gone through the whole movie in terms of conceptualizing what things would look like. And the idea of the light flickering through the forest was something that was in our heads. We knew what we were going for. But what wasn't, and what I didn't get, you know what it's like when you start working with a director and you start talking about a night scene, and you say, well, do you mind if it's really dark? And the director says, yeah, no, I want it black. I want it black. Well, what do they mean by black? You sometimes give a director black, and they say, well, I can't see anything. And then you might give another director, and you see something, and they say, well, no, we got to print it down. So, but that's unusual. Usually they want to see more than you do. But Andrew was different, but I wasn't quite sure. And it was funny because I had 3 condors up for the train stopping at the, when they put the sleepers on the rail. I had 3 condors up with some lights on, just giving a little edge across the forest. So you always had a sense of where you were. And it was right before, we basically shot the rehearsal. And it was right before we shot, I turned them all off. And well, not all of them. I turned 2 of them off, and I asked the gaffer to pan the other one off to the catering tent, so the producers didn't realize that I wasn't using them. And I shot it without anything but the light we put on the train. We put a 5K tungsten power on the train where there was the lamp. Yeah. And it was on a dimmer, so when it came nearer, we dimmed it down so it wasn't flaring in the lens. And that's the only light source. And right at the last moment, I said, well, let's turn all the other stuff off. If he really is, if Andrew, that is, really is in sync and he's willing to have it black, we'll give him black. And of course we did it, and I just, yeah, that's great. I was really happy.
The smoke helped.
Well, the smoke. We were very lucky that, I mean, it was Canada, it was Edmonton, and it was like coming on winter, and you just get that lovely kind of atmosphere where the smoke just hangs. You try and do that sometimes and you never get it, do you? But that was, it just hung perfectly. It was just fantastic. I mean, I really lucked out. I mean, that talk about happy accidents. Yes, it was, but I thought I was kind of brave to turn the lights off.
Oh, I know. And it looks so strong because of that.
Yeah, it wouldn't have had it otherwise.
And I mean, that whole sequence of the train stopping. I mean, how long did you, because I mean, I remember when it came out, I said, my God, it must have taken days upon days. I mean, all the sparks are going through the wheel goes with the sparks, but through the sparks you see people on the
hooded
hilltop,
men and stuff,
backlit.
Yeah.
And so to get that right, it was
yeah, and it was all first unit for one camera too, so it's quite.
I mean, that must have taken forever.
But it was all storyboarding. It was always very specific shots. You know, I mean, somebody mentioned today there's a shot where, you know, the camera's in front of the train and it locks up to the train as the train, you know, pulling forward, and it locks up to the train and comes in forward. And it was really low tech. I mean, we did that with a flat car, and I just put a piece of polystyrene on the front where the train was going to hit it, and I shot it handheld with a camera and a sandbag. I mean, you can get much more easy than that. And the only light on the front of the train was like a 4x4 silver card reflecting a bit of the lamp, the power lamp, you know, the headlamp, reflecting a little bit back on the front to get you a sense of the shape of the front of the train. And we didn't want to light it too much because it was a tiny little train, and Andrew wanted this great big steam train, and then we had this little silly thing from a museum. So we had to make it look big, but it worked out pretty good, didn't it?
I mean, True Grit, day exterior, people always say, that's easy, you know, it's all outside.
It's the hardest thing.
It's the hardest thing in the world, just to keep the constant so that the sun.
It was interesting on that, because on that we had all that night shooting. At one time, Bob, the producer, I mean, and he was saying this, sometimes they don't, but he was saying it in the best kind of way. He was saying, what about trying to do it day for night so we can get continuity? And I said, no, the only way I'm going to get continuity is light it. You imagine trying to get continuity in the daytime with the sun starting over there and going over there, and it's meant to be a night scene. It's never going to happen. So I kind of insisted on lighting that one, and he was fine. I mean, some producers will really push because it's a cost thing, but this was fine. They just wanted the best look.
Is this the final scene when they're riding at full pelt in the middle of the night?
No, that was something else. I mean, the stakeout at the cabin, Greaser Bob's cabin, which was quite a really extended scene, and but the overall sequence is basically split up in 4 different sections, and it's like 4 different axes, 4 different eye lines. So I couldn't light it just with one set of lights, because one time you're looking like north-south, another part of the scene you're looking east-west, you know, so there's just no way you could light it with one setup. So I was leapfrogging 4 different lighting setups in the middle of the night. It was going from one to another, so we could go from one scene to another, one section of the scene to another, you know. And I mean, and the idea of trying to do that in daylight with sunlight. So, I mean, the same applies when you're doing a day exterior. You've still got that problem. I think it's the hardest thing to do, shoot in full sunlight a day exterior, especially that's happening over, you know, well, at the scene in True Grit as well, where they're in the camp above the meadow. I mean, we shot that over in 2 different sections because we had bad weather. We shot it probably over, I'd say about 14 days of shooting, and it's all meant to look like it's happening in an hour and a half. You know, so you really got to structure your shots and say, well, I'm going to shoot this one 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning, and then this one at 5 in the afternoon. You know what I mean? It's like, well, you know, that's the hardest thing, I think. That's really the hardest thing, to get continuity on a day exterior. But everybody thinks, oh, that's easy.
And that last scene where they're riding at night, it seems in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, a lot of big lights. Or the horse, with the black horse, with the galloping horse. We had
full pelt at night.
Well, one of it, we built a road in a forest, like I guess it was like nearly 200 a 2,000 feet long road cut in a forest, and had a large crane with, I think it was like 10, 18 Ks or something on it to get that. You know, because you can only really light a horse galloping if you're on a side shot. You can only really light it from one angle, or you can't light it from the back because you won't see the face. So you've got to light something from the front. You can't light it from over behind it because at some point it's going to come a total backlight, and that's no good. You can't light it from this side because you'll get a camera shadow at some point. So there's only one place you can put it. So you put a bloody great light as far as you can that way, so you don't have the drop off between the beginning of the run and the end. You know, it's it's quite simple but hard to sort of pull off, I suppose. And then so we built a road that was big enough to carry. We had an electric golf cart that could go like 30 or 40 miles an hour, and had a little aero jib arm with a Libra head on it, stabilizing head, and the horse trainer was magnificent. He got this horse to track right close to the lens, you know. I mean, it was amazing. Well, we were going to do the big close-ups of the horse galloping and foaming. We were going to do it as a sort of CGI shot, a complete CGI. And then I tried shooting it with a little digital camera, and I thought, no, I'm going to do this on film. You know, I wanted to do everything on film. And we managed to do it. It was like, you know, I felt really thrilled when we got what we got. It was really great.
Yeah, it's just that when you read the script, you say, well, galloping, black horse galloping at night in the middle of nowhere.
That's right,
how
yeah.
the hell are you going to do that?
Yeah, no, that's exactly. I said that. I didn't think it. I said it to Joel. I said, "How the hell am I going to do that?" And he said, "Whoa, you're the cameraman."
But then you see, so there are, like in the Valley of Elah, there's a sequence there which really struck me when Tommy Lee Jones goes into a motel room, or is it? And he pushes the door open, and the headlamps of the car behind is...
that's in the end of... You're talking about No Country for Old Men.
Oh, No Country for Old Men, that's right.
Yeah.
And it's staggering, because there's these... What cameramen never do usually is put double shadows. But because it's the headlamps, you get these double shadows, and then you've got a mirror there, and you see the reflection in the mirror of him going through, all silhouetted. Was that an accident, or was that again?
No. I was really bored. I'd set it up, and I thought I got the car there, and I thought, well, yeah, we'll have one big shadow, and he'll walk in the door, and I thought this is really boring, and I thought, no, there's something wrong about this. I wanted it to feel fragmented, and I thought, well, I'll do two shadows. Everybody else does. So I put another light on and got two shadows.
But it really works, doesn't it? It really works for once.
And my gaffer would say, "There's two shadows." I said, yeah, it's two shadows. You don't do two shadows. No, it was a last minute thing too, because I just thought there was something about it was just too clean, and then we angled the mirror to get another little kick off the mirror, and it was just, you know, it was one of those things you just kind of play with on the day. The same on that. There was in the same sequence when Javier's behind the door, and you see the reflection of him in the keyhole, before Tommy opens the door. And that was always going to be a little CGI element in the keyhole. But then we wanted to do a shot of him behind the door, lit as though the light's kicking the keyhole, and lighting back up in him. And that shot kept me awake for days, actually. I'm not kidding, days before we did it. And it was only on the set that night that I was looking at, what can we do? And I thought, well, I need something like a little spotlight. So I got a dado light, and then I tried putting the iris on the front and just leaving a little slither of light coming out, and it created a little rainbow of color. And that was a happy accident. I didn't know that was going to happen, and it was just perfect because it just had a sort of very surreal look, and it could have been you just having a reflection off the inside of the shot out keyhole, you know, and just kicking back and doing this little arc of light. And I saw that, and I said to Chris, they go, "Oh, wow, I was like a kid," you know. I thought, this is fantastic, you know. And those things happen, and that's what gives you a really that's why I get a real buzz out of the job, because that sort of happens, or I turn the lights off on Jesse James, and I get that thing with the smoke, and you go, "Whoa, am I lucky or what?" You know.
Yes, and it's just a question of being able to pick those moments and use them and maybe change your mind of what you were going to do.
Yeah,
And it becomes better.
And I think it's also, I mean, it's also being in a position where you can actually feel confident and take that chance, you know, because I mean, a lot of the time, I find I'm on a film, I'm sure you do. You're in a situation that's kind of maybe political or whatever. You play safe. But I'm really lucky working with Joel and Ethan because I can say to them, well, you know, you want this dark? Or I say to Andrew Dominic on Jesse James, you want this dark? You really mean it? You know, you're okay with that? And I know, you know, I have the confidence I can take it that far. I can play a bit. And especially with Joel and Ethan now. I mean, if I'd screwed up something, they would say, they would make a joke out of it. You know, they would probably enjoy it if I did, because I don't think I have very much.
You haven't?
No, and they're good, they're pranksters, so it will be fine, you know what I mean? Because they know you'll be trying to do something, and if you didn't quite bring it off, they would still give you the credit for trying it, you know, because that's what they're into, you know.
Yeah. When I was asking about taste there, I forgot to ask you something, and I think I know what you're going to say, but is there a cultural taste? Do you think that the British or European cinematographers have a different eye to American, you live in America, to American cinematographers and the way, I mean, the landscapes that you shoot in America feels European to me, as a European approach to American landscapes. If there's a similarity, maybe Paris, Texas, you know, the bits of Paris, Texas that are quite similar to the way that you, and I never really see American cinematographers shoot American landscape in that way. And it might be a cultural thing. It's an eye. A Japanese cinematographer, would he shoot the same way as we do? Or a Danish? I mean, look at the Scandinavians. They shoot in a very different way and have a different approach to framing and the pastel look and the things like that. Is there, do you think that? Or do you think we're all individuals?
I think there probably is. I'm not really, I don't know. I really, somebody else would say that, really. I mean, I know I was always struck by what Robbie Muller did on Paris, Texas, or did on Live and Die in LA. And I always thought it was like staggering, and it was like so bold and fresh, a sort of fresh view. I don't know if I'd say that on what I do or not. I can't. I mean, I wouldn't really, be able to comment on that, really.
It's maybe simplistic anyway, that, you know, because you know, the Conrad Halls and all the American cinematographers also have their own specific style. I don't know whether that's American or it's just them. Yeah. I don't know. I do remember once on one film, producer called me criticised something I was doing and saying that's much too European. I still don't know what the hell he meant. But. Yeah, so you've collaborated with the best, some of the best in the world. Obviously, the one we know so much about is your Coen Brothers collaboration, where they storyboard everything. You come at a slightly later stage where they start a storyboard, and then you help storyboard with them, and you carry on. Is there any restriction in that you feel that you can't loosen up and just try things out because it's so tight? Or do you find it's actually quite comforting, because then if there are any doubts about things, it sort of helped you?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to stick to it. I think maybe on True Grit we veered off the storyboards a little bit more than we had before even, but the storyboards are so good you do tend to stick with them. You don't think of something better because they're kind of perfect, I think. Do I find them a restriction? I can't think of it in those terms because that's the way they make movies. You know, there's certain directors make movies in certain ways, and
so how
that's
is
the
it
way they
different
do
from
it.
Sam Mendes?
Well, Sam, the first film I did with Sam was Jarhead, and the film he'd done with Connie before that, Road to Perdition, was very different. Road to Perdition, they had storyboarded. I mean, Connie wouldn't sort of moan about it, that he felt it was restricting, that it was a very, very tight storyboarded movie. But when we did Jarhead, I think Sam wanted to break completely away from that. So we basically shot all of Jarhead, most of Jarhead, handheld, and we would start shooting rehearsals handheld. And I would just kind of start creating shots during a rehearsal, and Sam would watch the playback and we'd talk about it and say, well, you move on this guy's action here, maybe if he goes further. You know, it became an organic process, and we never storyboarded anything at all on that film. So it was, and I love working. it doesn't bother me if it's storyboards or not storyboards, as long as the director has a kind of passion and a point of view, you know, and a reason for going the way he's going. And I'd say Joel and Ethan, that's the way they've always worked. Their films are quite, in a way, their kind of films are quite formal, aren't they? The way they're constructed and stuff. And when they work best, that kind of process kind of disappears and you're just watching the movie. But that's how they do them. They're very constructed pieces of work. So, you know, and like, you know, I said before, they're kind of Bressonian like that. They're very much a jigsaw puzzle, but they're quite unique like that, really.
Yeah, no, and it's sort of comforting in a way that you've got such visual people that, that are there.
Yeah.
None of their decisions are not going to be visual. They're always going to have a great visual idea.
Right, yeah.
And what about Scorsese? How much?
Well, I just did with the one movie with him, which was I think quite different from the other films he'd done. And I mean, I know that I was asked to do that film because I'd done a lot of documentary work, and I'd been recommended actually by one of the documentary directors, producers I worked for at the BBC, Chris Curling, and so I think it was the combination of my documentary background and doing features that why I was on that movie. He didn't storyboard that, but what he did, he gave me a copy of his script where he'd done like bird's eye views of the set and where he wanted people and how the camera would move through it, and sort of little notes on the feel of the scene that he wanted. And what we would do in the evenings, we would discuss the next day's work, and then I would set up something. And then call him in after, you know, when we were ready to shoot, and it sort of worked like that. It wasn't absolute storyboards. I felt I had quite a lot of freedom in terms of actually how you said it, but it was the conceptualization that he had very much had in his head, and it was a very strong idea if a scene wanted to play in one moving shot, if we wanted to do it in one wide shot, if he wanted to do it in very specific cuts, you know. So it was a very strong concept he had for it, even though it wasn't actually storyboarded in pictures.
So this is a subject that I want to go to now, which is digital. And I know, and everybody knows, about how you've really loved your last film that you shot, or the experience of using digital. And what I find difficult to understand, because I do know that we're talking about the Alexa at night, it is beautiful, it does make beautiful images, it's 800 ASA, but for somebody like you that has always operated all their life, has always looked through the eyepiece, has always loved to be so close to the actors, what do you feel, how do you work with the digital when the sensor is actually faster than your naked eye? So you're really sort of lighting by monitor, and I've lost my track there. When you said
no, really, no. When I shook my head, you lost your track. Because I don't feel I'm lighting by a monitor. I'm just doing the same thing. I'm still using a light meter. I mean, I know at the moment as electronic viewfinder, they promised me Ariflex, an optical viewfinder by the time I do the next film. You know, I haven't got it in writing. I've got it in an email, so maybe I can hold them to that. But
so you're not going into a tent looking at a monitor and then go back to the camera and all that business. That's something other people do.
I was working with a color stream system, which I could actually do color correction or do some timing over. Basically, I was shooting the film with one LUT, right, one lookup table. So everything was coming in on this one LUT, but some scenes that I wanted to do little corrections on, I would go to the DIT and this color stream calibrated monitor, and I would tweak it, and then the metadata of that change I'd made on set then would follow the dailies all the way through the system, and that will be there on the DI when I go and do the DI. That color correction will be in there.
And that's what you love.
And I do like that. I mean, that's what I was doing, but I was not going back to the monitor and lighting it from the monitor. I was going back to the monitor to check sometimes, but no, I wasn't a slave to it. I would probably poke my head under the black cloth, go, okay, and ask Josh, the I said, are we okay exposure-wise? Why not? If you've got that facility, it's kind of nice to know it's all right. And I'll dash back to the camera and operate the shot. So I didn't feel restricted. I actually felt liberated by it. And James, my wife, said it was the first film I've been on where I slept at night. So that's pretty good, I think.
Yeah, you don't have to wait for the
I don't
Russian
worry
report.
about the Daily's report. You know, I hate that.
But that doesn't mean you'll stick to digital forever. You'll swap and change depending on the project, or are you
To be brutally honest, I'm not sure why I go back to film unless it was a specific project. Right now, that's my thinking. Yeah, I must say.
Grain. It's sometimes nice.
We can add it.
They can add it. Now your project that you're doing with Sam Mendes again, the new Bond film, and it's obviously there. I don't know it's what number, 23 or something.
23.
So what's your approach to that, or can't you talk about it? And how are you going to make it different, or are you going to make it different? Or
I don't know. It's early days yet, John. I don't know. No, I'm just.
what's your
I've just been here a few weeks, getting in sync with Sam and talking through the script, and we're just slowly figuring out our approach and the look of the movie. You know, it's a long sort of organic process, so I'm not going to say much about it now.
No, I can tell.
I know it's a daunting project.
Is it daunting?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you know,
It's
but
very
I don't you find. I mean, every film is really when you find it first sort of start on it and think, oh my God, I got all this to do, you know, and how am I going to do, you know, such and such a scene? I think they're always kind of daunting, but you know.
But you know, the human element of all your films, is that more in this Bond than maybe some of the other ones, which are more fantasy?
I don't think Sam would be directing if it wasn't really built around character
that
and
would be
stuff. Yeah, I mean,
part
you
of
know,
the
I
difference.
definitely think so.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
but I mean, I on it because because of that, because I trust whatever Sam's going to do is going to be really interesting, and it's going to be about character, you know.
And digital.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
All right. So
You know, there's another great thing about digital. I mean, it's not just the image quality and the flexibility. You can go 200 ASA or 800 ASA, and you can change the color temperature without putting a filter on, and all these wonderful things. And you can tweak the color on set and know that that's what you've got. But the other thing is, you don't need the magazine. You can separate that from from the sensor and the lens, and you end up with this tiny little piece of equipment you can put anywhere to get the shot you want. And because I'm laughing because, like on True Grit, you know, we're tracking along with this jib arm and a Libra, you know, stabilizing head and film and, you know, and all that. And I'd done some tests for that film with the, you know, is it the SI camera, the one that Anthony used on Slumdog?
yeah, I can't remember what it's called.
It's that big, right? Silicon imaging camera, right? It's that big. I had it at the end of a plastic garden pole, you know, one of those used with a thing that you cut trees with. And, you know, like a 15-foot pole, and I was just putting out behind a horse's hoof or right up to the horse's mouth or something. It's amazing what you can get. I mean, it's fantastic. You know, the opportunities, especially on a film where you're doing a lot of action, you know, the possibilities of what you can do that in terms of rigging and lightweight remote heads and whatever, you know, that's, you know, I think that's really exciting. The technology it's actually, you know, the technology's keeping up with the present time. I mean, to be brutally honest, film is quite an antiquated way of capturing an image, isn't it, really?
Yeah, but there are still problems with digital. You know, there are certain things that you.
Yeah, there's still problems with film.
Yeah.
I love film, don't get me wrong. And I never thought I'd be saying this. If you asked me this question 9 months or a year ago, I would be saying, no, I'm not. Why would I use digital? It's not giving me anything that I'm not getting from shooting film. But I think that we've just gone over that knife edge now, you know.
Do you ever find any problems with panning, you know, panning on video, that it sort of goes slightly out of focus and goes back into focus when you start panning?
No.
We found that.
On the Alexa?
Yeah.
I don't pan much, I guess. I don't.
That's it. That's it. You keep your brain still.
They edit themselves, don't they?
Yeah.
So that helps enormously as well.
Yeah.
So they know exactly which shot
Yeah,
they're going to use.
absolutely.
And
And
how
I mean, it's
the
a
way they're
little,
gonna cut and
a little different now with somebody like Jeff Bridges. They'll run the scene a bit longer for him for performance reasons, but even up to The Man Who Wasn't There, they were still in their sort of minimalist sort of expense mode. I mean, that was a very low budget film, and you know, if they wanted just one line in close up, they would shoot one line in close up. They wouldn't run the scene. But I mean, how many other directors do that? Not many, I'm sure. Yeah.
I mean, the editor is such an important person for us. You know that if you get an editor that uses everything you give them, then you get frightened because there are very specific points where you don't want the shot to be used, and other points where you want the shot to be used.
Yeah.
And you get the wrong editor, they'll use everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's frightening.
Yeah.
So the Coens, it's fantastic.
Well, that's the thing is how visually orientated the director is, how much is he got an overall vision of it, you know, rather than having the editor deal with a lot of coverage. I mean, you know, it's like some films are like that, some films aren't. I mean, I've been lucky. I've never worked on a film. Oh, I say that. No, I worked on one for Air America with multiple cameras. I didn't really enjoy that very much.
You didn't like that one?
No. But otherwise, I haven't. And you know, the only one I'm hesitating is like Beautiful Mind. Ron Howard likes working with multiple cameras. And when I went for an interview with Ron, I said, you know, I know you like shooting with 4 or 5 cameras. I'm not really sure that's me, but I love the script. And I love to work with you, but I don't know how this. And he said, no, I want to basically do this differently. With one camera, we'll have a second camera. Sometimes when we both agree, we'll run 2 cameras. If it was an intense, dramatic scene, we ran 2 cameras, and he did that all the way through. We basically shot as a single camera movie, you know. So I've been lucky. Well, I suppose I've been lucky. I mean, that's the kind of films I've worked on and chosen to do because that's the only way I feel comfortable working, you know.
But True Grit was one camera, basically, was it?
Oh yeah, I mean, now and again, Joel and Ethan, we have somebody go and shoot little pieces like on No Country for Old Men. We'd set up shots on the river, very specific bits of action with the dog and Josh going down the river that had to be shot in the morning or the evening, and we had it mapped out. I had the whole scene mapped out from the storyboards of what time of day they would be shot, either in the morning or the evening for the light. And we had Paul Elliott, I'm sure, English cameraman, shot some of that as a second unit for us. But it's very rare they do second unit on any of their films, really.
How long's the? How many weeks is the shoot?
I think True Grit was 11.
Yeah.
55 days probably.
Yeah.
56.
A lot of films here are 7 weeks, 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's when you get. If you have only just one camera, you just can't get enough footage. You know, you can't get enough of the little details and the close-ups and the things that you're talking about. But obviously, it's ideal to have only one camera. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, it depends on the situation. I mean, what you want. I mean, and you know, a film like A Man Who Wasn't There, I'd have used a lot of absolute direct light with no diffusion. And then, you know, on something like True Grit, the night scenes we were talking about, I mean, it's basically one light source, but that one light source was, at one case, it was 29 18Ks in a row that was 150 feet. The lamps were, you know, 4, 5, 6 feet spaced apart. It was one light source in the end, but it's, you know, 29 lamps creating one big soft light source. You know, it just depends on the situation and the kind of effect you want. I mean, I do, I suppose, have this way of working that is ganging up multiple sources to create one light source. And then, you know, like the lamp in the middle would be brighter than the ones on the outside. I'll do this with strips of bulb on a long batten. I might use like 20 household bulbs, and the middle ones might be 150s, and then they'll tail off, they'll go hundreds, and they'll go 75s and 60s and 40s, and by the end they're 25 watts. So you get a bright center to the light source, but it sort of dies off and wraps round. And if you light in the face or anything, you get a more sort of pleasing to my eye anyway, kind of wrap to the light rather than an abrupt end to it, if you see what I mean. And I don't know if a technique does that or not. It just looks pleasing to my eye, and it's the way I've got into sort of lighting, you know. But whether I diffuse one, or whether I bounce one, or whether I use a multiple number of sources to create a soft light, it's situation. In Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? We were in an old kind of music hall in Vicksburg, and for the final sequence, and it's a very low ceiling, and I couldn't really rig much into it, so I used 56 tweenies, you know, 56, whatever they are, 600 watts are they? I don't know what they are. 56 tweenies, all on dimmers, and because they were only lights that I could get into like less than a foot from the ceiling to give myself space for the shots. And, you know, again, I'd wired, the ones on the outside I had wired down. The ones in the middle, I think, were warmer than the ones on the outside. So I had this sort of color shift as well as a density shift, just to, you know, just to give a sort of a soft light on the stage, but a soft light that wasn't going everywhere. You know, so it's basically the same idea of the light, the same concept, but you're using different techniques to get that kind of look, you know, and control it. So, you know, I mean, often I like bouncing light a lot, but I mean, I'll bounce off, you know, a stipple silver reflector sometimes, or I'll bounce off a bed sheet, just depending on how directional I want the light and how far away the light's away from the subject, how much I want it to wrap round, how much I want to control it off the background, you know. But it's not something I kind of, it's you know, it's much more sort of an instinctive thing that I do on the set, you know. I suppose maybe I do it more easily now because I've been doing it that way for so long, but you know. I don't wish lit Army of the Shadows. I wish I'd have worked on it. I couldn't have lit it better than it was, but you know, you look at some films and you think, if I'd have done that one movie in my whole career, I could have been more than satisfied, you know what I mean? Oh, I have no idea. I don't really. The thing is, you know the experience of making that film, so it's kind of clouded. I mean, I've been on some little films where you've got something halfway decent, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it's like a real kind of high because of what you've achieved with minimal resources, whereas on something else, people go, oh, well, that was great. I think, well, yeah, but I could have done better. I had so many options, so much stuff behind me. I should have done better, but they don't see it like that. They just put everyone in the same bag, you know. You know what I mean? Oh, I mean, I'm sorry, you know, I've been really lucky. I mean, and John will know, and you get lucky with work with people, and you get lucky and do a film, and then suddenly somebody asks you to do something else. I was really lucky early on. I was shooting documentaries, and I worked with Mike Radford, and he went on to do this film called Another Time, Another Place, and he took me on because I'd done a little TV series for somebody else. But I'd shot documentaries with him, and so we knew each other, and he trusted me because I'd done this one bit of TV, and that was my chance. And I did this film, and for some reason it suddenly went very successful at Cannes Film Festival. And then somebody asked him, what do you want to do next? And he said, I've always wanted to make a film of 1984. It came right off his top of his head. He didn't have a script or anything. That this producer said, oh, okay. A year or so later, we were making 1984. Now, how lucky can you get? Him and me, because he took me with him. I mean, it's not, a lot of it's, most of it's luck. Yeah, you still got to be able to do it when you get there, or you won't stay there. But if you get the chance, you know, a lot of it's luck. I've had more than one, because then I tied up with Joel and Ethan, you know. I mean, basically, I gave up the film industry after a certain film, And then I met Joel and Ethan, so, you know, I've been very lucky a few times.
Well, you're being very modest, because you're incredibly talented, and we're so honoured to have had you here, and thank you so much for all the support.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. It's a great pleasure.